If you have ever wanted to learn about 3D printing or get your own 3D printer for personal use or even for possibly starting a new business using 3D printers, well, this video was made for you. For less than $300, you can get started 3D printing and making things you design. It's a rewarding experience you'll never forget your first 3D printed part. I am making this video for many newcomers that have commented on this channel their desire to get into 3D printing. I know what it's like to be uncertain about how to start something you know very little about. I was that person only a year and a half ago. I hope this video will encourage many of you to move forward and take the next step. It's not that hard to do, as I will show you, and the experience you will have is all worth it. Hello, I'm here trying to edit this new video, how to start 3D printing. This video is intended for anyone that's been coming to my website, that's new at 3D printing, that wants to know a little bit more about it. So there's so much content here, and I'm doing the best I can, but I'm having to break it into two parts. So part one is going to be basically giving some basic information on how 3D printers work and so forth, and it will end up showing how to go out and download a 3D software package like Tinkercad, and downloading Cura, and actually creating a small part in Tinkercad and exporting that as an STL, picking that up by Cura and slicing it and exporting that as a G-code file and taking that file and plugging it into one of my King Room printers here. So this first part will get you to that point, and then part two will pick up where we start actually printing that part. And I'm also going to be showing printers and filament and stuff and talking about cost, because the whole premise of this video is to let people know that it's not too hard and too difficult to get into 3D printing, and from a financial standpoint, less than $300 will get you up and running. So bear with me. This will be part one, and then hopefully you'll watch part two. Hello, Ken Weller here with New Tech Inventors. If you had asked me a year and a half ago if I would ever be surrounded with a bunch of 3D printers like I am now here at my home mini print farm, or that I would have a new print farm like the one that we're doing in the other building, I wouldn't have known what you were talking about, because a year and a half ago I knew absolutely nothing about 3D printing. I hadn't even seen, even online, a 3D printer printing something. All I knew was that I'd heard of the 3D printer and heard of the concept and so forth, and but here I am today. So what this video is all about is for people like myself that either don't know very much about 3D printing, that want to know about it, that are interested in it, that have just gotten into it. And what I'm going to do in this video is show you some of these printers and show you not only how they work, but how you can get started like I did, just from scratch, and get going. The best way to be successful and the best thing to have happen is for someone to have a good experience, a good first-time experience 3D printing. So I'm hoping that this video will help some of those that haven't done 3D printing yet to have that good, successful, and rewarding experience the first time. So let's go ahead and let's start getting into a lot of different things. Okay, the way the 3D printer works, the head is extruding filament, melted filament, and it comes out as a string. And that string lays down on a build plate, and the printer head just moves it around in a pattern, something like that. Now, as the melted filament comes out, it cools very quickly. So by the time the head has gone that far, this filament back here is already cool and it's hardening. However, when you come around the next time, you're actually laying another layer down right next to that one. And the instant it goes down, it is very hot and it melts to the solid layer that you laid down before. So as you keep on laying layers next to each other, each time they melt to the previous layer or the previous line that you put down. And that's what makes it become a solid. And once it's formed its pattern, normally the printers will come back and start doing a crosshatch pattern, something like this, and then go the opposite direction. And of course they're doing them very close. And then come back the next time and go the opposite direction again. And they keep continuing that until it keeps getting higher each time. So your square block with all this crisscrossing in the middle of it is getting higher each time as you build this thing up. So that's basically what's happening with the 3D printer. If you've ever used a hot glue gun, it works much like a 3D printer. A solid stick of plastic is put into it. With a little bit of pressure, the plastic is pushed through a hot end where it melts the plastic, and the plastic comes out in a stream. The stream can then be run back and forth, and the melted plastic will actually fuse to the previous layers of plastic, as in the demonstration here. This is the way a 3D printer works, except the 3D printer has a much smaller nozzle than the hot glue gun. The nozzle on the 3D printer is very precise and puts out real fine threads of filament that will lay down and then come back and fuse to the next layer, much like what's shown in the video. We're going to be printing 4 small parts on this printer to demonstrate how the layers are built on top of each other to form a part. This printer is currently printing the very first layer. It's a fine layer of the part, and we'll take a quick look at it. We've printed part of it, so you can see half of one part there, the first layer printed. Now we'll finish printing, and we'll continue and go ahead and print the first layer of a couple more of the parts. And we'll now stop our printer, take these off so you can see how thin that very first layer, and every layer is that thin. They're pretty much transparent. It takes hundreds of these layers on top of each other, fused together by the process to create the parts. Now we're going to go ahead and get back to running the printer to finish the parts. is on there tight now because this bed's still warm. When it cools off, these parts will release a lot easier. These are the parts off of our printer here that we printed. And this was the first layer where we stopped the printer and took this first layer off, so you could kind of see how it starts printing on this bottom with the first layer and then continues to build up and form a shape. Okay, these printers that we're going to be talking about use filament to create their 3D objects. And filament is basically a type of plastic that's in a rope or thread type form and rolled on these spools. It comes different sizes, different colors, and different types of filament. And with the most common starter filament being PLA. And so we'll talk a little bit about filament and how it works with the printers, but this is the material that you'll use to make your 3D objects. Okay, there are a couple of different types of printers. The most common is considered FDM, and for those of you that want to know what FDM stands for, it's Fused Disposition Modeling. I don't know who came up with that name, but for me what it means is that when a 3D printer operates, it takes and melts a filament or a solid plastic material, and then after it melts it, it allows that melted plastic to fuse with other plastic, and that's the fused part of it. And then disposition means that you're putting something in a particular place, and that's where this melted filament is being aligned with other filament that you've previously melted, and they're being fused together. And then modeling basically means that this whole process is intended to create a model or a shape expected by the person operating the printer. So, simplified terms, 3D printers primarily use filament that comes in a spool. It's a hard plastic thread or string, if you will, that goes into an extruder which heats it and then brings it out in a melted stream and lays them down together, and we'll get into that a little bit more. FDM printers. Okay, these are FDM printers here, and they are taking filament off of these spools and melting it and creating a shape or an object. With most of the FDM printers, the bed moves back and forth in a y-axis, and the head moves the other direction in a x-axis, and then the head will come up as the part builds in a z-axis. Now there are exceptions to that. For example, this printer right here is a Delta printer, and the bed on it does not move. It's stationary. So the head moves in all three axes. It goes left, right, up, down, and prints in that manner. And then we have one other version of printer that's fairly common, and that would be like this Tronixy printer here. What it does The bed does not move in an X or Y axis. It moves up and down in the Z axis, and the head moves in both the X and Y axis. So they're still FDM printers doing the same thing, just a little bit different way of accomplishing that. And then we'll also get into a different kind of 3D printing, which is resin printing, which is different from FDM. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. Before you can start printing something, you have to have an object to print. Okay? Using your imagination, you can imagine or draw a part, but with 3D printing, you need a software package to be able to create that drawing. And one of the very simple free software packages out there is Tinkercad. So if you go to your computer and you Google Tinkercad, you'll come up to the website and you'll be able to download a free copy of Tinkercad like I'm doing right now on the screen. To be honest, I have never used Tinkercad. I have never downloaded Tinkercad. So this will be my first time downloading this software package and using it to create a simple 3D drawing. And I'm sure that anyone who has done this before can do a lot quicker than I can. But being the first time, I'm going to just let you see how long it takes me to figure out what needs to be done. Right now, I'm figuring out how to, what I have to do to download the software. It's wanting to have a username or a Gmail address and so forth, so I'm having to now figure out what I'm using to get in here so I can access Tinkercad. And in a few moments you'll see that I was successful, and now I'm getting into Tinkercad. The first thing they want to do is give you a little tutorial, so they pop up something on the screen. Well, I don't have time for that right now, so I'll get rid of all of that, and I'll go right into creating a little object. Now what I want to do, I'm going to go over here and click on one of these square boxes and hold down my right mouse key and drag it over to the build platform, and then I'm going to grab the corners of it and change the shape of it, make it a little more rectangular, and pull this side down, make it a little bigger. You can make it whatever you want. Okay, now that I've done that, let's take a ball and let me figure out what I have to do to get this ball up on top of this square block. Since I haven't used this software package before, it's new to me. This is exactly what you're going to experience. Aha! Now I've got it up to the right level. Now I need to slide it over on top of that square. I'm just rotating the thing, holding down the right mouse key to rotate the thing for you. Now I'm moving the ball over on top, and I'll go to the top view so I can center it, and need to drop it down a little bit so it's kind of embedded in the square cube. Once we've done that, okay, I'm finished. That's a good object. Now what I want to do is with the other software package, I have to export this to create an STL file. So I'm going over here and looking and finding where I can export it, and export it as an STL file, and I can call it whatever I want to. And then once I get it exported, then that image is in a 3D file on my computer. Now there's one more step. I need to do. I need to take that image and put it through what's called a slicer that actually formats it and prepares it to be printed on a 3D printer. The most common slicer is Cura, and most 3D printers that you purchase will have a slicer included on a chip that comes with the printer. And what I'm doing now, you can go out and Google this. I'm just taking the Cura version that came with one of my ANET printers, and I'm loading that onto the computer, and I'm going to go through the steps right now, and you'll see it configuring the computer and downloading that version of Cura. And what Cura does, it takes that thing and actually does each layer the same as when you saw how we were printing in layers. This thing lays out each layer and every stroke of the head and placement of that fine thread of melted filament that's going to be laid down in and that would create the shape that's going to be the finished product. So if you notice on the screen, Cura is downloading now onto the computer here. And as soon as it's downloaded, we'll bring it up. And then once we bring it up, what we're going to do then is we're going to load that file that we created in Tinkercad. And we're going to load that file into the Cura software. And once we get it into the Cura software, for demonstration purposes, I'm not going to go through and fool with any settings. I'm just going to take the absolute default settings for the ANET printer. Even though I'm going to be printing on a king rune, normally whatever printer you have that you purchase, your version of Cura that comes with that is pretty much set up your printer that you purchased as the default printer. And but still, as you'll see, even though the default printer is the ANET, this job without any changes is going to actually print okay on the king rune. Now that I've got Cura installed and set up, now I'm going to go out and find my file, and I found it, and there it is. There's my little square block with a little ball on top. And now I'll go down to that right hand corner, and I'm going to slice it, and by slicing it will then format it and change that STL file into a G-code file. The G-code file will then be saved on my computer, and I will be able to go or copy that G-code file to an SD, a micro SD card. And then once I've copied it to the micro SD card, then I'll take that micro SD card and plug it into my king rune printer. Okay, that completes the process of creating a 3D image and creating the file for that and sending it to a slicer and preparing it for the printer and so forth. Now, be sure and watch the part 2 where we will be actually printing this part on the printer, and then we'll also be talking a little bit about printers that you may want to purchase and the filament that you'll need to use with those printers and so forth, and talk about how you can do all of this and purchase everything that you need for less than $300. So be sure and watch, and thank you for watching this first part.